Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Michelle Natalia Moore about how to be the leader that turns organizational attention into market advantage. Michelle Natalia Moore, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you. Hello, Jonathan.
I am super excited to have this conversation. It's so fun talking with you in the pre-interview and getting to know you a little bit better and sharing some common background. It's a strange thing how people find those connections. We were chatting about our time in the former Soviet Union space. I lived in Belarus with my family, and we were talking about some of the current conditions there. And anyways, I would love to hear more about your time in the former Soviet Union areas, if that comes up in our conversation today. But that won't be the focus of what we talk about today. Today, we're going to be talking about how to be the leader that turns organizational attention into market advantage. Ultimately, that's the goal, is we want to lead in order to drive value in the marketplace, to drive success of the organization. But it's not an either or proposition. It's not like we can only drive market success or like be good for our people, treat our people well. And in fact, when you treat your people well, it can drive market success. And so we're going to talk about the ins and outs of that and what we can really focus on as leaders to be more effective. As we get started, I wanted to share Michelle's bio with everybody. Michelle Natalia Moore brings 20 years of experience building successful teams, including as partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, and in tech startup spaces. Now she helps organizations do better work in half the time. How? By managing organizational attention. Michelle works with leaders and their teams, consultants, advisors, innovators, IT, HR, lawyers, and engineers to design work with 5 key elements impacting attention in mind. Focus better journeys results in sustained value creation and market advantage. Michelle is the founder of Mind Equity, a management consultancy bringing 21st century tools and practices to the forefront of team performance. She's a member of MIT's social presence teaching team and speaks at McKay CEO Forum, McGill University, and is featured in the 2020 Digital Wellness Report. What a tremendous background, a tremendous amount of career success that you've had. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you today. Before we launch on anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of your background or personal context?
Sure. I think one of the interesting things as I reflect back on 20 plus years is that most of my career in the Big Four consulting space was focused on helping companies improve growth by implementing visible technology, something you can touch and see. And it's so much easier to help companies foster change and transformation when you have something that you can touch and see, like a piece of tech, like SAP or e-procurement tools or whatever. And now, my focus has shifted to this question on the invisible, this invisible thing we call focus and attention. We can't really touch it. We can see it in behavior, but also this invisible relationship we have with technology, this invisible kind of aspect of tech. And so that's what I find most fascinating, and the challenges associated with tackling something that's more invisible, like what's happening to our brains. So I think that's the nuance of tech that I would add is really different in my work right now.
I love it. The invisible tech, the focus and attention of what we're doing as leaders, and with the tools and the resources that we have to drive success for ourselves, for our teams, for the organizations we work in. I think that's wonderful. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the world we're in today, with the range of new technologies and technological disruption, we have to figure out how to better leverage all of that and do it in a sustainable, effective way, while also balancing the ethical considerations of what we're trying to do. That's a really interesting kind of spin-off topic that we can touch on a little bit today as well. Let's bring it back though and talk a little bit more specifically about that focus and that attention. What specifically do you mean by that? I agree. I think that's largely an invisible element, and it's hard to grapple with. So what do you mean by focus and attention? And then how do we start to bring that into our leadership approach to drive value in the marketplace?
Yeah, so these two words directly influence productivity, effectiveness, growth, potential, et cetera, right? And they're two different things. So focus actually is a skill that can be trained. It is also an act of will that we as humans have the ability to manifest. It's the ability to concentrate. And we weren't trained in how to focus. At least I wasn't. I don't remember ever being trained on how to focus my mind. And I think that's an interesting gap in education. And then the definition of attention is different than focus, because attention is the mechanism through which the brain harnesses resources. So attention is also a function of the body. It's similar to metabolism. Like metabolism breaks down food into energy, and attention is the thing that the brain uses to transform focus. So these two, one is a skill and one is an asset. And they're both kind of invisible. We can see the outputs. And so I believe that attention is really this secret invisible asset that we are largely ignoring in the workplace. And imagine the capacity for innovation, for productivity, if teams actually treated attention as an asset and harnessed it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think about teams that I've been a part of, teams that I've led, and just my work as an individual. Your comment about, we never learn how to focus, but it is something we can develop. We can get better at focus, and we can harness our attention to bring forth better outcomes. And I'm trying to think about, like, at what point in my life did I really start to tap into that focus? Because for whatever reason, you can ask my wife. Sometimes it's annoying to her, but she says, yeah, you're a very focused person. Like, for whatever reason, that's something I learned how to do. And I get into the zone, or I get into the flow, or whatever you want to call it. And I'm able to be really productive when I get into that zone. And I can think back, into like my teenage years and being able to do that. So I'm not sure like what the trick was, like how I did that, because I don't remember ever specifically learning about it either. And I asked that question because if I don't remember how I got there, I'm not sure how to teach it, or to coach that towards my people. So what do you think? Like, what are some of the ways we can harness that focus and that attention and really develop that as a skill?
So I'm going to venture a guess as to how you were able and are still able to use your focus as a really impactful tool to create value. It is because you are aligned on your purpose. You are interested in creating an impact in the world. You head a social impact program, right? And so you are interested in something wider than just growth, than just monetary growth as a performance metric, right? And so my guess is, not knowing you, is that you get excited and focused about the books that you're writing, the research that you're doing, the consulting that you're doing, and that enables focus. And that is also my experience. And I think there is also some clear data when you talk to social innovators in particular. They can maintain focus because of the impact that they care about making in the world. So I think that is one key. The other one that is more mainstream is really helping teams answer this question on a team type basis or on a role basis. what are the value creation activities? Like, how do you even define value? And if you're clear on how you, for your role, defines value, and then how your team is adding value to the organization, because that's going to be really, really different in every situation. But if you can define that and then ask the question, well, which activities in my daily workday actually contribute to value creation of a tangible asset that we can see? And most teams, I find, don't know the answer to that question. They don't know what their value creation portfolio is. So those are two answers to your question, Jonathan, I think.
Yeah.
Purpose and value. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So connecting to your why, having a clear meaning and purpose, doing things that fulfill you, that can drive more focus, more sustained energy and focus towards what you're doing. That makes perfect sense to me. And there's so much research on, connecting to purpose and your why, and, person organization fit, person job fit, aligning values and meaning and purpose to drive fulfillment and productivity. So that all makes perfect sense to me. And I think also, as you were describing, the elements that go, how we define value and the elements that are the desired outputs. That is a really key important point, because I see so many people who try to be productive, they try to be focused, but they end up spinning their wheels. Like, they spend the vast majority of their time doing things that don't actually create the types of outputs that are actually going to bring value to other people. And so, again, just to turn it inward a little bit, I think about myself, and I'm like, how do I prioritize? How do I focus in on those things that are most important, and decide on what I'm going to let go or spend less attention and time on? I suppose each of us have to determine that for ourselves, but it comes back to exactly what you just said. It comes back to, how do we define value? What are the metrics? What are the outputs that are indicators of our value creation? And then let's focus on those things. And I think you're right. I think most teams, most organizations don't do a very good job of defining that. And so they end up spinning their wheels. They end up recreating processes or different things that don't actually help anything. And at the end of the day, they don't have a lot to show for the hard work that they did. And they did do hard work. They did a lot of really interesting things. But at the end of the day, if you're not actually producing, then it's kind of like if the forest falls in the tree, if the tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it. And so it's that kind of a situation. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, in relation to attention, is like, how do you see attention in relation to this idea of flow? I've talked to a lot of researchers and practitioners around this flow idea, and we tend to, just in our common vernacular, we talk about getting into a flow state, or just getting into that state of flow. How do you see that connected with attention? Is it separate, or is it a similar thing, just a different way of framing it? Talk to us about that a little bit.
Sure. So I definitely believe in the power of flow, especially for the more creative job roles. And if you take Cal Newport's definition of deep work, that this is work that creates new value, or that requires also a lot of brain power to produce something. And you think about knowledge workers, you think about writers, you think about innovators. And those are people who, in order to create value, they have to have a certain amount of focused, deep work and space to do that in, i.e., the blocked time on the calendar. And even when you look at writers like Thoreau, or even current writers like Yuval Harari, who takes breaks of 3 to 4 month meditation retreats, right? In the case of Harari, or people who take walks in the forest. So this complements deep work, but I think it's the idea of flow is varied from person to person, and how to harness flow is also very individual. But if you get down to what can I as a leader do to harness attention or enable my employees to be in flow or to be in deep work, or however they want to describe it, then I need to model it myself. I need to explain, okay, these are my challenges. So if I just reflect on myself too, we're in confusing times. And most of my career, I was rewarded for multitasking. I hired people with multitasking skills. I would even ask that question, are you good at multitasking? And now I cringe when I hear that, because it erodes our brain. It's a distraction in and of itself. And so the confusing times that we're in are that we have a culture of overwhelm, of overwork, a culture of busyness, a culture of distraction, and all of these things are bombarding us. And the pandemic has only made that worse, because we've layered in anxiety and fear of uncertainty and all of that. So as leaders, can we be open and vulnerable about, well, I'm still addicted to busyness, and this is what it looks like. I have trouble shutting down the tabs on my computer, to just focus on one thing at a time. And to have some open dialogue about those very personal vulnerabilities related to our relationship with tech or ability to focus. And that is a starting point.
I'm excited to announce the publication of my new book from HCI Press, Bluer Than Indigo Leadership: The Journey of Becoming a Truly Remarkable Leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There's no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of our problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations.
Yeah, I think that you've raised several really important, points and aspects to that. And if we're going to be productive in a sustainable way, we have to give time and attention to being present in the moment, and it's in the word focus and attention, right? Be mindful, be attentive, be focused on what you're doing when you're doing it, and don't allow yourself to be distracted by all the other things. I'm sitting here in an office. I have 3 computer screens. I have a tablet, I have a phone, like just with the tech that's just right in front of me, I have the potential to just be all over the place. And I could have like a gazillion windows open at the same time, and I could be doing like 5 things at once. But we know that you're not really doing 5 things at once. Your brain has to switch between different things. And some people are able to switch faster than others, but you're still having to switch back and forth, and that erodes at your mental acuity and your attentiveness. And so,
and it shrinks your brain. That's what's so scary. The brain is shrinking, and because we can't see it, we're not scared about it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, sometimes it's an interesting thing. You referred a few minutes ago about kind of the culture of busyness. I think there's kind of this assumption, this cultural norm that leaders should be busy all the time. And if they're not, then they're being lazy or something, like something negative. And so you see people running around constantly. They're running around like chickens with their heads cut off. They're running from thing to thing to thing, from meeting to meeting. They're trying to multitask, whatever. And when you stop and think about that for half a second, you realize, well, how productive can they possibly be? If you don't have time to debrief after a meeting and to like process and to think, and you're just going from meeting to meeting to meeting all day long, of course that you're going to end up essentially being a warm body in a seat, not actually processing, not doing much of anything with what is happening in those meetings. Same thing with interactions with people on your team. Same thing when you're multitasking. Like, you just have to build in breaks. You have to build in opportunities for the deep work, as you described, for the strategic work. And there's no substitute for just time and attention and focus. And I remember that's something I've had to struggle with. I am a focused person. I'm a analytical person. I like to be productive. I like to have outputs. I like to be able to show what I've accomplished, and to realize that, you know what, that means I also need to take breaks. I need to go out and walk my dogs. I need to take time to just sit and be present. And that seems almost counterintuitive, but when you start to practice that, and you start to get into that kind of a normal routine of just being quiet and mindful, and that you'll find that it just allows you to focus much more. It allows you to be much more productive in those chunks of time that you set aside for different core behaviors, tasks, interactions, whatever. And I'm certainly not perfect at it, but I found myself that I've become much better at it over the years, and giving myself the space and allowing myself to not be busy all the time has made a huge difference. And it keeps your energy level up. I'm not feeling burned out. All those things diminish focus and ultimately diminish attention and your ability to be productive.
What you've hit on is the third element in my method that impacts our ability to harness attention at work. And that third element is balance. So this degree of balance, the balance we have between rest and work. There's even a great book called Rest that I recommend by Alex Supran-King that talks about this balance between rest and work. And the balance also, you mentioned, I'm very analytical. Well, what is also, in terms of creating innovation in a team, what is the balance between reliance on analytic thought and data and tapping into wisdom and insight practices, right? And frankly, all of these things relate to the practices we have in our lives and in the workplace. The other piece of balance is just the mind-body connection. When my head is in my screen all day long, I don't feel my feet. I'm not in my body. And so my well-being starts to decrease as well. And, the recent Deloitte burnout survey, I think, shows that, I can't remember the exact number, but it went up from 70 to 80% risk of burnout now in teams. And that is a very scary number. So this relationship with technology and this balance between interaction with humans versus interaction with machines or Zooms or phones, right? Our interaction with humans has decreased because of the pandemic. So how can we put some more coins in the bank of the human interaction, even in this situation, to improve innovation as well as well-being? And the other thing I wanted to mention is this word productivity you and I have both used in this conversation. I am really loving the word effectiveness more, because productivity relates more to humans as machines, or the busyness culture that frankly, I feel important when I'm busy, right? It's an ego thing. I feel important. I don't have time, so therefore I'm important. But if I think about productivity versus effectiveness is getting the right things done. And productivity is measured in many different ways, but as individuals, I think we use this word in a synonymous way with busyness. Like, I feel productive if I sent 100 emails. Well, were any of them useful? I don't know, right? So those are just some interesting vocabulary nuances, right? When you think about these words.
Yeah, that's super interesting too. So what I hear you saying is that it's worth stepping back and reframing. And sometimes that means discarding certain vocabulary that has baggage to it. Like, there's nothing wrong with the word productivity, but you're right. There's a certain level of baggage to that word that we lump in a whole bunch of other things with it. And that framing can negatively impact us and our ability to be balanced, our ability to be focused. And so I'm all about healthy reframings and disrupting and challenging assumptions that are unhealthy. And I think that absolutely should be the case when it comes to work. I mean, there's studies, lots of studies about, the most effective duration of work. The 8-hour workday, most people work way more than 8 hours a day, but say the 8-hour plus workday, that's an artifact of the past in the Industrial Revolution, and unions and such, when we were doing more physical labor. But in a knowledge economy, let's look at the recent Harvard study that talked about the value of a 6-hour workday, for example. There have been other studies that have suggested even less time than that. And I've found, just anecdotally, with my own work, that, I can point to, okay, how many hours did I work today? Well, if I'm lumping everything together in terms of my mindfulness practices that contribute to my effectiveness in work, it's probably a lot. But when I think about it in terms of balance, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm getting a lot done. I'm accomplishing many things. I'm providing value. But there's only a limited amount of time that's actually in that focused work, because there's only so much we can do as human beings in a day, where we're actually being effective in the time that we're spending. So I think these reframings are very useful and can help us have a more healthy approach as we lead and are trying to find a balance. But also, like you said earlier, we need to model that. If we're trying to help people find their flow, and practice mindfulness and focus and be attentive in the work that they do, if we're running around like chickens with our heads cut off all the time, it just demonstrates to them, no matter what we say, the actions demonstrate that we value busyness over everything else. When really, I shouldn't care if someone wants to take a nap in the middle of the day or go on a walk. I shouldn't care if they need to take frequent walking breaks. I should encourage those types of activities, because that's going to help them to be energized and more effective in what they do.
You bring a really good point to the forefront about the 8-hour workday. So I personally, I absolutely believe that an 8-hour workday, and especially not a 10, 12-hour workday, that these are not necessary anymore. And if we're working 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day, two things are likely amiss. Maybe we have too much work on our plate, and we just have to ask for that portfolio of work to be balanced. And that could be a job design issue or a lack of employees issue. That's one point. A lot of people have just too much on their plate for their job role. But the one that we can control in terms of work design, of personally and in our teams, is, are we just busy 8 hours a day, or are we doing value added work for the maximum, which Cal Newport says you can only do max 4 hours of truly in flow or deep work per day. And people are shocked to hear that, because when you ask the question, well, how much focused work would you like to be doing per day? They're like, well, if I could, I'd be doing 8 hours. Well, the brain can't do it. So rest assured, even if you just do the maximum, which for the normal human, for the normal intelligent human, if you're doing 2 hours of focused work a day, you're a star. And the rest of the time you can spend in meetings and logistical activities. But I firmly believe that the 4-day work week is something that is a reality. Again, if you look at books like Shorter and the 4-day work week, and all of these new studies coming out showing that it's possible, it's just about shifting the busyness mindset, I think, and about organizing around. And when I speak about this, I speak primarily to the population that I work with, which is professional services firms or knowledge workers, right? People who primarily think for a living. That is where the asset of attention is most valuable. In different types of jobs, it's going to be different, right? But I'm very focused on the knowledge workers sector for obvious reasons.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Michelle, it has been a real pleasure talking with you. I note the time. I want to be respectful of your time and let you get on with your busy day. But before we close, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about the work that you and your team do, how you can help them, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Sure. So you can find me at mindequity.ca, CA for Canada, mindequity.ca. And if you want to get started on focusing better, you can do a really quick free assessment using the Score Your Focus tool. So if you go on any page on the website, you'll see a green button. It says Score Your Focus, and you'll have 15 questions. And you can see where you are in each of these 5 areas that impact your attention: focus, culture, balance, tools, and your environment of where you're working in. Yeah, so that is how you can find me. And LinkedIn, Michelle Natalia Moore, and the standard, the social media handles. My last word is that I use a technology. So I'm trying to be a digital minimalist. And so I have pared down my social media activity to just using, for professional purposes, LinkedIn and Twitter. And I don't engage in Facebook or Instagram or other mediums. So that is very design specific in terms of trying to do what I preach, and encourage people also to consider, how to pare down their tools. So yeah, that is it.
Wonderful.
For today.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. It has been a real pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Michelle and her team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.
The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.